again. In our first episode, what I was trying to show you was how we got to this stage. That was the raw tomato stage, and if you want to learn more about that, go see the other video. But essentially, what we start with in our next phase is that product, and that is this. So I'm going to show you exactly what goes into it, and then it's simply a matter of assembling it. It's pretty easy to do, takes a little bit of time and patience. Anyone can do it. Okay, let's start. We're looking at our 2 liters of the canned tomatoes that we made in episode 1. I'm adding 4 cans, large cans, of good quality Italian tomatoes, a couple of liter jars of tomato sauce, and a couple of small cans of tomato paste. So that's the tomato portion that's going to fit in this 1 8-quart pot. And this 8-quart pot, when doubled, becomes this 16-quart pot, which we also use to can later. So we use this for a lot of purposes. Let's look at the other ingredients. We start with 4 onions. They're going to go in here. We're going to start off with a cup of olive oil. And to that we're going to add a good measure of garlic that you can see in the jar there. Also, we're going to add a measure of dried basil and oregano. And we're going to be using some coarse salt. I'm using kosher salt, and a little bit of sugar. That's going to measure in one of these bowls, and we'll show that to you separately as we assemble. Getting the garlic ready in advance and keeping it in a jar in the fridge with lots of oil in it really saves a lot of time. I put in about 2 tablespoons of garlic. And a cup of oil. I'm using extra virgin and oil that I prepared myself with some basil in it, drying it first, of course, just to make it extra flavorful. Add just a little bit of kosher salt at this stage, not very much, just maybe half a tablespoonful. And we're going to heat this fairly aggressively, so medium to high heat. That measure of salt is about 1/4 of a cup. So I'm going to add another 1/4 of a cup and fill that with sugar. So it's a half salt, half sugar mixture. And the only other spices are oregano, which is dried, and of course dried basil as well. And about 1/4 of a cup each, using that kind of measure. So we really have equal parts of oregano and basil and salt and sugar. And they're going to go to the onions as soon as the onions are golden. Maybe in another 5 minutes max. Okay, quick tip. I just said 1/4 cup, but as I measure it to this cup, it's probably more like half a cup really. The important thing is that I use exactly the same containers for every single batch, so I know it's always the same. So that was the amount of oil, 1 cup, and it's probably more like 2 cups of the dried spices, including sugar and salt and oregano and basil. We're going to add those now. Those are coming to a nice boil, and or a good strong simmer at least. And then as soon as we add the spices, we're going to turn it down to very, very low. I'm cooking with gas. Okay, so you can see that color, and hopefully we're getting flavors released into the onions, and not at too high a temperature so it doesn't burn. And essentially it's going to stay on a very low simmer now, and we'll move on to the next step. Okay, next step is to add the raw tomatoes first, and then while those are cooking on a slow heat or nice simmer, we'll open all the cans and then add those, and that will be essentially the first step done, with 1 step remaining. Looks like a bit of an oily, oniony mess at this stage. Don't despair, it's going to be finished off with some wonderful tomatoes, and it's going to come up to look like a sauce very soon. Okay, there we go. We've got 4 cans of tomatoes, 2 of sauce, and 2 of paste. Those are going into the pot. I tip my sauce upside down and then let them drain after I've emptied them, and grab the last few drips. Okay, it's ready for the very last step, and that's simply to take these large chunks of tomatoes and all of the raw material and get it into a food processor to get it down to something that is going to be a little bit easier to use. So we're going to do that and then transfer it to my big pot. But you could be finished at this stage. This would make about, something like 6 to 8 liters of sauce. Okay, penultimate step, that is our sauce. That's going to create jars like that in the quantity of about 12 to 14. So that is a ½ liter size, so you can do the math if you want to use larger or smaller jars. I'm going to transfer that cup by cup into my food processor, and I'm going to gently blend, not aggressively, just a very gentle blend is all that's needed. And then I'm going to transfer all the contents from the food processor, which is going to fill half of that container. The next stage essentially is to add heat. So while I do my second batch, I set this to about 300 degrees, and I put in the pot into the oven in a preheated stage so it doesn't burn on the bottom. I leave it for at least 20 minutes until I add the second batch, and then the whole pot cooks for 2 to 3 hours. It depends on how much time you want to give. More is better. But at a low heat, 300 degrees. So easy does it. That's all it takes. Continuing from here to here to here. Okay, elapsed time is maybe 5 minutes. I'm moving slowly because I'm taping, but it really does not take long to go from there to there. And essentially that's the sauce that you're going to be canning. We're just going to heat the sauce and we're going to put it in jars and process it, and we'll learn about that later. Okay, we're preheating the oven. Have a little peek here. That's half full. That's going to be full later on when we do the second batch, but it's just a continuation of what we just did. While that happens, I just basically clean up what I have and make sure the kitchen stays reasonably clean before we move down to the second batch. Okay, there's the second batch done. Exactly a repeat of what I just showed you. Just did it twice, that's all. And then this is the sauce that's come out of the oven. It's been in there for about 35 minutes at 300 degrees. And we're simply going to repeat what we did a few moments ago, which is we're going to process this in the food processor, add to this, and fire it back in the oven for about a couple hours. And then it's going to cool down naturally, and we're going to do the final stage, and that's basically bottle it and process it so we can enjoy it. Okay, as advertised, that's pretty full and it's ready to go in the oven. In fact, for my oven, which is a bit small, I need to turn that pot lid upside down to fit in there so it squeezes in. And what I've done is I've turned the oven off to about 400 degrees, but I'm going to turn it down now so it's back to 300, and that really just makes sure that it doesn't lose too much heat as I take the pot in and out of the oven. And there it's going to stay for at least an hour and a half, and as long as 4 hours if you really want to. But on average, I leave it in for 2 hours and let it cool down naturally. I don't need to remind you to give it a good stir so that the heated sauce rises to the top and mingles with the stuff that we just added. Okay, we're done. I probably look like a Civil War era surgeon, and there are some splatters in the kitchen that I'm about to clean up. But basically, from the time that I started until now, with one, large container, so something like 30 or so jars of sauce ready to be processed when this is done. Maybe an hour and a half or so. So not very long, and that included the time to talk to you and to set the camera, answer the door a couple of times, take care of a couple of yapping dogs, and the usual interferences of life. So I hope you've enjoyed it, and the next step will show you processing it. That's really the easy part. It's dead easy. You can check it out on the internet. But what you're going to do is essentially put it in jars and process it so that it's safe to eat. Talk soon.